Welcome to the Kindness Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Carly Riggs, and today's episode is an awesome conversation that I had with Zac Sappenfield, who is one of our career solutions specialists at Down Syndrome of Louisville. Zac and I sat down just to chat about career solutions, what it is, what the process is like, how to get someone an individualized job, what it's like for an employer to have a person with a disability on their team. Lots of really great stuff in this conversation with Zac. So let's get to it. Enjoy, Zac Sappenfield.
You are listening to the Kindness Warrior podcast, a Down Syndrome of Louisville production, serving locally, sharing globally.
So first, let's get to know you a little bit, Zac.
I've been working at Down Syndrome of Louisville for about 5 years now, all in career solutions. And before that, for about 7 years, I was working in public education as in elementary schools. I did every kind of role. I was a classroom teacher. I was an aide, a little bit of subbing, and I worked at lots of different kinds of schools too. Some were quite affluent. Some were a collection of small towns that barely had a stop sign. We saw a lot of, there's a big Somali population in Columbus. I worked with a lot of students from, where English wasn't their second language. Had plenty of time with dealing with severe behaviors in some cases. And
so this was in Columbus, Ohio?
It was around Columbus, Ohio, and a little bit in northwest Ohio, near the Michigan border. It's Bowling Green, Ohio.
Okay, and that's where you're from?
Yep. My family was from Columbus. Everybody was originally from the South, either Texas or Georgia, and we all grew up in Central Ohio. We all went to school in Central Ohio, and then my family started moving around a lot. And so now my dad is in California with his wife and the grandkids, and my brother's in Indianapolis.
So, did you used to live in Bardstown? I feel like I heard
lived
you
in
were
Bardstown briefly. Yeah.
Okay.
It was the summer I was down there, and I was applying for teaching jobs throughout Kentucky, and I did about 10 different interviews, and nothing really worked out. I was working part-time making Jake's Country Sausage out of the Quick Stop 150 in Bardstown, Kentucky. And then my dad had a radio station. He had a short show in the mornings, and he had a Facebook following. And they had this big rally because they thought he'd gotten fired. But he wasn't. He just he went on vacation. And my dad got in touch with Lisa French, who worked at DSL, and kind of explained what I was doing, and I was looking for a job, and Lisa had me in, and we interviewed, and she told me about employment, and I said, well, I've had lots of different jobs before. I think I can do that. And the rest is history. I've always liked the organization. That's what you kind of fall in love with. We have a great team. I've never seen a company culture like what we enjoy with the employees and the members and the families. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah, so the rest is history almost,
The rest is history.
Yeah. That's something that we talk about, I feel like, a lot at DSL. It's like the culture and you have to have it, in quotes. You have to have it, whatever that is. But, a lot of the team, or all of the team, I feel like, we all have different backgrounds, but there's, in that it probably, I would think, is passion for what we do and passion for our members and for advocacy for our advocates. So on that note, what is Career Solutions?
So our program works with our members when they're done with high school. In our members' lives, there's a big drop-off after public education ends. And after your traditional four-year high school career, most people get a year or two of vocational training through their high school or through a program like Aaron's. There's a couple different programs that the state of Kentucky has that'll help give you job training. And so we meet people either when they're in high school and they come in for our pre-employment class, which has been suspended temporarily, or when they're adults and they either finish high school or maybe they've had a few years or maybe they moved into town and then they come talk to us. And what we can do is work with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. They pay for this program. And we spend about 2 or 3 months getting to know an individual. And then we write a 10 to 15 page paper just about them, everything they're into, what they're good at, what they like, what they don't like. And then we sit down with everybody, the whole family, any friends or workers who know the member well, and we say, who do we know in town where this person can go work? Here are their skills, here are their interests, here's what they're good at. Who do we know that we can sit down and have a meeting and talk about a customized position? Most of the time, our members aren't going to fit into the traditional jobs you find online or in newspapers. But my job is to go into a meeting with a manager and say, hey, this is where this person could fit in. They could do this and this over here. They could do this and this over here. They could work a couple days a week, usually like for a 4-hour shift, and make a contribution to your business. And if we can get to that meeting, there's a good chance I can get that person a job there. Mm-hmm. And by then, we've already talked to managers. We've already felt what the company culture is like. And we've kind of made our own decision. Is this a place we want to work? And then if a hire's made, I help with all the onboarding stuff, the paperwork, drug test, background check, arranging transportation is always big. And we stay around for training to make sure that this person's working independently and they don't need any more help. And at that point, I kind of back off. I go and do a couple monthly checks, stay in touch with managers, stay in touch with parents, and make sure that that person's doing okay. And then that can be their job for years to come. Things always happen. Like sometimes people are laid off. Sometimes people are illegally let go. But if everything's going well, then they can stay there for a really long time. And we've had people tenured for over 10 years at different businesses.
That's wonderful. So how many members do we have in individualized jobs right now at Down Syndrome of Louisville?
We have about 60 people working in the city. And of those, I would say 40 to 45 are back at work. Some people never stopped during the pandemic. Some people aren't back yet because their families are a little bit concerned about them working in public, where you are, more likely to catch COVID. And some people's positions have kind of been suspended while businesses are trying to cut some costs, or they may have reduced dining room area or just reduced staff. But we keep in touch with those people monthly and, see where they are, see if they want to go back to work yet, see if the companies are ready to have people back to work yet. But that's a big part of it, is maintaining those relationships.
Absolutely. So can you give me some examples of some of the jobs that our members have out in the community right now?
I just saw a guy who he's at Goodwill on South Hurstbourne, and his whole position is being there at the front, making sure everybody has hand sanitizer, all the baskets are cleaned off. And so that was unique since COVID came up. I'm starting with somebody who's going to be in the toy department at Kohl's in Springhurst. She just got that position. It's going to be fun. It's going to be very busy too. She's going to be starting right around Black Friday. So that'll keep her, busy throughout the holidays. We have a few different people with the YMCA. They've been a good employer. Really, it's all over the city, and we pride ourselves on not sticking people in the same business just because we know they'll get hired. That's something that happens in this industry. One of my favorite positions we got was at a KinderCare on Zorn Avenue. This member just lit up when she went in there, and I was like, oh, this is what we need to be looking for, child care centers. Mm-hmm. And this manager really went a long way to get her hired. And she's great at it. She helps out in the different rooms, but that's an example. Like, she's not back to work yet because they're just like DSL. They're under really tight restrictions about who can be in there, how many teachers, cleaning regimen, and that kind of thing.
So can you tell me a little bit about what a natural support is and why those are important in the workplace?
When you're going through your training, you just make friends. And most people, come up just like anybody and, start talking to a new coworker. And so those people can help from time to time. our goal is to make sure that our worker is completely independent and they need help with nothing. But, things come up, and sometimes everybody needs help. It's not a disability thing.
Right.
But do you have somebody at work that you can go to when you do need help? I'm running into that now because, we're busy and we're putting a lot of people into new jobs. And so I had to reach out the other day and say, hey, I might need somebody to help me cover some shifts here. We have a few different people starting. But just making sure you have that kind of support in place and that the person isn't like isolated or working in a bubble for some reason. That's really not an issue. Most of the time, we want to put somebody in a culture that we trust with a good manager. And so that kind of just develops naturally.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because, it's definitely something that I mention to families who seem nervous about their child having an individualized job. A lot of times they're nervous that their kid will be left alone, or I shouldn't say kid, their kid, but their grown adult would be left alone. But a lot of times, a lot of parents, and we have a lot of parents that listen to this podcast, like they're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to trust that they just feel so nervous about leaving their child somewhere and their adult somewhere. But one of the things that I like to mention is that natural supports are always going to, even if their job coach happens to not be there, we make sure that they've got those natural supports and that extra support within their own team at work.
And what you described is every single parent.
Right. Not just a disability. Yeah.
No. It's everybody. And every parent I talk to, that they're worried about it because this is what I really think the value of Career Solutions lies. This is the only thing they'll be doing in public independently, without a worker, without a parent or relative or, a friend. And it takes some getting used to. But we've had no issues, like that come up really. There are issues with TARC. They were not job related, I don't believe, but it's going to happen at some point. We just have too many
TARC
people.
For anyone that doesn't live around here, TARC is our public transportation system.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And we're really lucky to have it. If you go to any conference for the work we do, once somebody in a small town mentions transportation, everything shuts down. And then everybody, has their story about how many problems they have with transportation. But, we're lucky to have a system like this, and we met with them and try to make improvements. That's always a big one. But insofar as people bothering somebody at work, I've never really heard of an incident like that.
From everything I've heard from we've got 60 in the workplace right now, but through the years, we've had so many employers, and the employers have nothing but amazing things to say about hiring our members.
No, it's worked out well.
Yeah. Okay, so you walked us through exactly kind of like what the process is, but I want to talk a little bit about in detail about this meeting that we have with the individual, their family, and any of the important people in their life, because I've gotten to sit in a couple of these meetings over the years, and it's like my favorite thing. And it's literally like the opposite of an IEP meeting.
Yeah.
And most parents end up crying hysterically because you literally sit at a table and rave about all of the accomplishments of their child. So kind of tell me about that.
The way that this whole thing is structured is a person positive approach. You never talk about what a person can't do. They've just had enough of that in their lives. And there's no, like in an IEP meeting, unlike an IEP meeting, there's no structured goal. Like, you'll need to be able to do X, Y, and Z 80% of the time. And, all these, we talk about who this person is, what they like, and it's really well structured. When we can meet in person, we would set up big Post-it charts all along one side of a wall, and everybody would face that wall, and I'm up there writing. These are the person's interests. These are their strengths. This is what they like. This is what they're good at. And at the very end, that's when we get to what kind of jobs would this person like. And we talked about what kind of environment they should be in, standing or sitting, indoor or outdoor, what is going to work best for this person. And at the end of that, it usually takes about an hour. I like to have some research materials out, like a couple laptops. You can look stuff up, or your phone is perfectly fine. Because people will say, oh, I know this and this place. And you take into account how close it is to the family home. But if you can get that connection, that's kind of the key. And like I said, if you can get a meeting with a manager, there's a good chance we can work something out. But at the end of that, you have a list of businesses. And so your next step is to go and talk with them, try to set up a meeting. We have some great marketing materials that the DSL supplied us with. And so it's really as simple as, I'll go pick up our member. We'll have a folder with a resume in it, and we'll go in and try to talk to a manager, talk to a few of the employees, see, what do you guys actually do here? And after you learn some of those tasks, you can start to say, well, this member can do that. No problem. Mm-hmm. They can do this and this and this. And that's how a job's kind of customized. And in your training, they actually tell you not to take the member out to the business, because when you meet with a manager, it's just too much pressure on them. Like, you shouldn't put them through that. But if you don't take the member, you have no idea if they like it there or not. Mm-hmm. And so I always do that. Like, it's just, well, that's silliness. So that's like the KinderCare example. This woman just like, she was so excited to see the room with the babies, and like, this is the coolest thing ever. It's like, well, this is what we,
right. Yeah. Even if this particular job doesn't work, like, we got to find something that is like this. That's like when I walked into Down Syndrome of Louisville for the first time. I mean, I was mesmerized. I was completely mesmerized. I walked in and was like, it was so, the energy was something, and the color of the walls and the pictures on the wall. Like, I was just like, whoa, I can't imagine not experiencing that, and like doing a phone interview or something like that. It was such a huge part of why I chose to leave my acting career and start working here.
Like my interview was one-on-one, and then I had it with Lisa, and I had a one-on-two with Lisa and Melissa, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And then I really didn't get to meet anybody until my first day. And I went to the sublet, and everybody was hanging out. There's probably 30 members in there, a handful of staff. And you sit down, and all these personalities just kind of rush over you. And I'd already been chatted up by a few people, and it was just like, it was amazing. And right then, I fell in love with them. I was like, this is the coolest place, to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let's say that we've got a listener that is interested. They're like, hey, I have a business. Maybe I want to hire someone. What should they do?
They can get in touch with me. They can get in touch with my boss, Shelly. We're very easy to find on the website. In our career solutions, at the bottom of the page, it'll give you a way to get in contact with Shelly Durbin. We do this all the time. We can sit down, we can talk about what's actually done at your business, and we can talk about the jobs that our members can do. And then in the future, if we find somebody who, might be good for that, we can bring them in, talk about it.
So what does it look like for an employer? So let's say that I'm thinking about it, maybe, but it sounds like a lot of work, and I feel like that's sometimes the no that we get is like, I don't have time. That sounds like a lot of work. What would you say to that?
I would say it's actually less work than hiring an employee in the traditional way, because you get an employment specialist with the person the whole time. We help with training. We, still want our member to be trained like anybody else, but we're there to make sure they're performing. I've seen onboarding sessions with typical young adults, and it's disappointing a lot of times. It's disheartening. These people are not prepared. They're not dressed nicely. They're not paying attention. And I have to laugh because our members do so much better in interviews. They pay so much more attention. I did an onboarding with Kroger once, because this guy really wanted to be a bagger at Kroger. And he was working the hardest among all these typical peers in the whole group. But he had me to guide him through it too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You get that extra help.
Yeah.
So really, it's not much more work. It's actually less.
Okay. So like in a perfect world, let's say it's a perfect world, and I actually have someone in mind that we can talk about, and I got permission from them to discuss them. So in the perfect world, the person is not going to ever need a job coach ever again. So I want you to tell me about one of our recent success stories, which is Bailey. He's at Trinity in the works in the cafeteria. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
But Bailey no longer has no one has to go in and check on him anymore. Is that right?
I believe so. We've had a couple instances of that. And on the one hand, it's great. You're independent now. You don't have somebody checking in on you. And we have processes for that. Usually people go from a couple monthly checks to a quarterly check. And we've had a few instances where it just, there's not the need for it anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a big personal milestone. We've also had it where the job has become so automatic, there's just not a need for us. And they think that they can use the units from the waiver elsewhere. And that's okay. Every situation is different.
Right. And of course, some folks, I don't want to scare anyone, some folks will always have a career solutions specialist available to them if needed. But I know that recently one of our career solutions specialists wrote this gorgeous blog about Bailey because she was so proud of him and he didn't need her anymore. It was kind of like this, almost like a graduation thing where she's like, I'm going to miss him so much, but he doesn't need my services anymore.
The benefit of having somebody available to you, even if it's minimal, is just in the event that something goes wrong. You have somebody who can get over there, hear everybody's side of the story, work something out, and in some cases save their job. That's why we do a lot of work with managers. We do a lot of work with managers just communicating effectively with our members. For managers now, it's tough. And people are very, very sensitive at work. Not our members really, but your typical employees. And so managers are especially sensitive about talking to our members. And sometimes they're just like, I don't want to say something bad. They're so sweet, and it's like, well, we have to treat them like a person, like you would treat anybody else.
Sure. No one should get away with this type of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So that's actually my next question is, again, I'm trying to cover, hopefully we'll have listeners all over. Maybe we've got some job coaches listening. Maybe we've got some, at our business, we call you guys career solutions specialists, but some states call them job coaches. But I'm wondering, what are a few things that you would say you get called in for sometimes, and how do we find solutions to those things? I'm thinking let's say a member is having trouble following directions.
Sure. It's everything across the board. We've had instances where it's so simple. I don't want Bob going in the back of the store. And I look at Bob and I say, Bob, don't go in the back of the store. And Bob says, okay. And the manager, and there can be sometimes, people are acting up, and we just need a gentle reminder to say, look, you can't play with your phone at work. That's always a big one for everybody.
Right.
Typical peers too. Taking, too long of a break. It's usually just little stuff like that. If there's something big, you get more people involved and you have a meeting and, say, this is what's expected of you. We're trying to treat you like an adult. This is a grown-up thing. You're working. They're paying you for it. And some people we have to tell, if you get fired, we're going to have to think a long time about getting you another job because,
Yeah. Do we do visuals and lists and things like that?
Oh, yeah. Most people have a task list that they work off of. So phones are great. You can have a list on there. Most of the time, it's like a laminated thing that people kind of keep with them. Alarms on phones are really good for letting you know how long your break should be, when to stop your shift. Things, and they going back to the list, they can also have things like your clock-in number, any other little information you need to have on hand.
So you've been certified. Can you tell me about all of your certifications and classes that you've done?
Yeah, Brianna and I both got into the leadership training because it provides the highest level of service. It does take about a year altogether. but it also lets us bill more. And that helps bring in money for the program. But it also teaches you how to do the job really, really well and spend more time with the members. We have to spend at least 20 hours during discovery. And then, of course, writing the longer profile, which usually winds up being 15 pages. And then we both got the Certified Employment Specialist Professional Test, which is pretty long. It's almost 200 questions, I want to say. And if you've been doing this for a while, it's not that hard. There are some tricky, parts to it, but it's a nice thing to have. It shows you're staying with this job. You want to do the best at it, and it definitely helps prepare you more. This is not a field where people stay terribly long for some reason. I think it's because it's challenging, and I think it's because most of the programs in the state aren't as good as the one that DSL has. We've always had good people in it who were dedicated to what they were doing. But yeah, and we've continued to have members come through the system, and that's where the bigger DSL community plays a big part. If you've been coming to the teen and tweener programs that you host, or you're just involved in the community, we'll start seeing you more in high school and start talking about your job when you're an adult. And that really makes a big difference, because then, we get to know somebody earlier, we get to know their personality, and we get to know the stuff that we want to work on to get you employable. And, like I said, the unique challenge is everybody's different. Everybody has their own strengths. Everybody has the stuff that they're working on, and the things that they're good at. So it's no two people are going to be the same.
So tell me about, I know this is controversial, but I'm going to bring it up. We're edgy here.
Sure.
So tell me about why we as a country are moving away from workshops.
So the sheltered workshop, if you don't know, is it's a place where you work, usually if you have a significant impact disability, and you would get paid usually per piece. So you would get paid a penny for every little baggie that you put screws into, and you can work for 2 weeks and earn $2.50. Now, this is implemented by FDR when he did the New Deal to get more people involved in the workforce. So that was 80 years ago, roughly. And at the time, it made sense. But these places still exist in our country. And if you work in our industry, it's kind of horrible. And we've had, we know people who've been in them, and they've had regular jobs that are, pay minimum wage at least, and they've had jobs like this. And it's heartbreaking because their sense of self-worth, my work for 2 weeks is worth $2.50 or whatever it is. It's subhuman. And if we're really, going to do this equal rights thing in the United States, if you have a disability, that doesn't make you any less of a citizen, no matter what. So it's just, I don't know, it's not fair. It's not an equal protection under the law thing. So there's a force to get rid of them. There's an effort, but they also exist. And if you watch the right documentaries, you'll see that we consume products that have a hand in sheltered workshops. The counter argument that I've heard from people, and I've had job development sessions where it's taken 1.5 years for somebody to get a job. Their family was very, very patient, but this member was just very, very shy. And so even if she's talking to me and bouncing up and down and we're walking and I'm so excited about this, in an interview, she'd just be really quiet and kind of shut down. But there are organizations where they say, if you can't get somebody a job in 3 months, that's it. They're going to the workshop. And that's just, it's not fair. It's, job development takes how long it takes. It's not like discovery when you're just hanging out and having fun and, kind of working together. And you say, okay, it's been 20 hours or a few months. Let's wrap this up. The job development part's a huge variable. You don't know how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
All the while you're training somebody to do well in an interview and speak up for themselves, which is something we work on a lot. And it's tough. Even our members who are really outgoing, if they're just meeting somebody for the first time and they haven't really warmed up to them yet, it's difficult for our members to, speak about themselves. That's a lot of what I do. I try to, help with that. So yeah, it's tough to know that shelters like that or the workshops like that still exist, but they do.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're really looking at it, some of our current members that live in Indiana are still working in a workshop. And, and another counter argument that I have heard is, if their mom and dad are at work and they go there, at least they can earn a little bit of money while they're hanging out with their friends. Now, again, I don't think that in most cases that person would want to be doing that with their time if they had a choice. They would probably want to have a job that they want, doing something that they'd like to be doing.
You see the need, though. I mean, not everybody has it as good as we do. Mm-hmm. There's places out there where there is not a day program for them to go hang out and learn or, mm-hmm. be with peers. And that may be the only option for them.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
There's also, in the same vein, there's a lot of, a friend I reconnected with from high school had a business where he would disassemble computers and take the metals out of them and recycle them. And there's money in that, apparently. And he had an enclave, which is different than a workshop. He was paying everybody $15 an hour, but he hired people with autism because it's extremely focused. You are one with this little circuit board and you're taking it apart all day long. And he had like 100 people doing that. And he was paying them like double minimum wage, mm-hmm. but you're also not in a public setting.
Right.
So,
well, and that's, I feel like, is kind of the difference because, that's another thing that I've heard. Like, well, what's the difference between that and Ford? And it's like, well, in a workshop, many times it's seen as training. Is that right? That it's seen as training. So that's how they get paid less. Why do they get paid so much less?
It's a law. You can get a waiver saying that you're allowed to do this.
Oh. Why?
And so they'll say they're helping and it's job training, but it can last forever.
Right. And then those people are never actually getting real jobs.
Right.
Individualized jobs.
Right.
So even though we're in the pandemic, I'm hoping that our podcast is still, everyone still listens to it years from now. Maybe they find us later. And all of our programs will be back at it. We'll be post-pandemic. All of our programs will be happening. And maybe someone will be listening to this, and I want to tell them about PREETS.
Sure.
Yeah, let's hear about PREETS. First of all, what does it stand for?
PREETS is Pre-Employment Training Services.
Okay.
And our department made it. This was the answer to Jefferson County not having all the vocational training that they wanted. And so they reached out to providers and said, hey, put together a proposal for a curriculum. And so we would meet after school from 4 to 5, sometimes 4 to 6. And back, before pandemic, we could go out to different businesses, do tours. We could practice working in our building. But it was also self-advocacy stuff, post-secondary education options, workplace behavior, of course, problem solving, communication. We did lots of role playing. The members loved that. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely an in-person kind of session. And we didn't like not having it or suspending it, but over virtual, it just wasn't going to have the same effect. We weren't going to get the same as we do in person. But the class was really fun. And we would get, between 5 and 10 people, I would say. But the outings were great. And, we had no problem finding people who were willing to do tours, but it's also rush hour. So after everybody gets there and you load everybody up in the bus and then you drive somewhere, you're talking 2 hours before you, do your activity or take your tour and then come back to the building for pickup. But we did that Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's totally free. And it was a great way to get people started down their path to whatever kind of job they were going to get.
Yeah, and a great way for you to get to know them, too, to start thinking about taking notes and thinking about what jobs would be great for them. Is there anything else that you think the world needs to know about Career Solutions, what you do?
We love to meet new employers. So even if you have no idea what somebody with Down syndrome could do for you, give us a call, get in touch with Shelly or myself, and we'll set up a meeting and talk about it. But that's how we assimilate into the public. We don't like putting people at the same businesses. It's not always going to be Goodwill, or it's not always going to be a bagger. In fact, I think we only have one bagger, the whole city. But that's how we get involved, and that's how, we can make a difference in your business. It starts with that initial meeting, and we go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zac, for joining me today.
Thank you, Carly. You're good at this.
Hey, thanks. That is so nice. Speaking of, we actually have a really cool parent education session that Zac and Brianna did for some of our parents virtually, and we snatched up the audio from it, and that will be another episode of this podcast. So you'll be hearing from Zac again. And do you want to tell us a little bit about what that session is about?
Yeah, at a conference, we were talking about our program, and some of the feedback we got was, okay, great, that's your program, that's how it works. What do we as parents need to do to help prepare our child? We thought, that's a great concept. Let's talk about that. And so after doing some research, we realized that the parents their children who become adults, but their kids who do chores together as a family together, not, you go do this, but we're going to go paint the fence together. We're going to go sweep the floor together. Those are the members who grow up and they have skills to bring to the table, and they have work ethic. And so we were exploring what research has been done on that. And honestly, it's blessed little. There's very, very little, especially about American families. But we started, what we did learn was in rural communities, when people are doing more work as a family and at home, those are the kids who are proud of the chores that they do. They're not whining. They're saying, I can do this and this and this, and here's how I help at home. And so that's what we're kind of talking about now, like how to engage your kids at a young age to work with you. Because those are the adults who are the most successful in the workplace. And it makes our lives a lot easier because these people are already used to working. They have skills that they can bring to the table, and they have a lot more to offer to employers. So it kind of covers that, and, ways to go about doing that with your family. But that was the answer to that, that question. What can we do at home to prepare ourselves? And the answer is chores. Do chores together. And eventually, as you progress through them, you'll become competent and you'll be doing them independently. It's just like you learn anything else. And it's such a basic concept.
It's like chores. It kind of is like, but we do lots of life skills classes at Down Syndrome of Louisville, and one of the classes that I teach, we cook once a month, and some of our members will look at me like I am Looney Tunes when I tell them that it's time to do the dishes. I'm like, no, we all do the dishes together. I'm not doing them by myself. Like, we all do the dishes. So there's some families who, and I feel like what happens is, it's just easier for mom to do it or dad to do it. It's just easier. You're going to make a mess. You're going to do this. It's just easier for me to do it. But what happens is they don't ever learn how to do that. And also, like, not only job skills, but we want if that is the level of, if living on their own is the level of independence that we're trying to strive towards, then you got to start that early. I know a lot of, new parents with toddlers, one day she'll live on her own. It's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then right now you need to start making sure that they are able to do some of these things that will, because I don't want to say it's too late for me to be teaching them as an adult, but if they don't have that,
it's late.
Yeah. It is late. It is late to be like, oh yeah, they're a teenager. They keep saying that they want to get their own apartment, but I can't get them to help with the laundry, or they won't help with the laundry or whatever. It's cultivating that as a youngin.
And I think if we're going to talk about controversial stuff, Carly, that the living thing is the final. I mean, that's the next frontier. I know it's heavily regulated, and DSL has like not a foot involved in it, but that's the biggest hurdle probably, is training to live on your own and dealing with loneliness and doing your chores and, avoiding boredom and avoiding things that can happen, like, overeating or, whatever kind of stuff would happen to you if you're truly living on your own. Mm-hmm. But I want that for our members, and maybe in the future we'll get involved with it. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On our very first episode, we had Mark Hubler and his family, and Mark loves living on his own. He's been on his own for, 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been on his own for, his all of his adult life. And he loves it, and he wouldn't have it any other way. But he talks about loneliness a lot. And so that's something that we talk about a lot. Like what are things that we can do to combat that? And that's actually something we've been talking about a lot in our virtual classes. Let's write down things that we have to look forward to. Let's make a bucket list of things that we can do. Let's not think about the things we can't do. Let's talk about the things we can do. And, that kind of thing. I mean, and shoot, everybody needs that right now. Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody. So anyway, Zac, you rock. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And hopefully after that awesome explanation of our next episode, our listeners will hop on to that education session too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
This has been the Kindness Warrior Podcast, a Down Syndrome of Louisville production. To learn more about Down Syndrome of Louisville, visit our website, downsyndromeoflouisville.org. If you have questions or ideas, you can email us at kindnesswarriorpod@dsoflou.org. The music for this episode was written and performed by Alex Stotts and Owen Eiler. The Kindness Warrior Podcast is produced and edited by Ethan Holstein, produced and hosted by Carly Riggs. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.